Okay, I'll call the order of the Sparks City Council meeting of December 10th, 2018 with a roll call, please.
Mayor Smith,
Here.
Council Members Abbott,
Here.
Lawson, Bybee,
Here.
Dare,
Here.
Acting City Attorney Iding, and City Manager Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, if you all please stand for the invocation, we have Pastor Barb West from the Sparks Church of the Nazarene. Welcome, Barb. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you all bow your heads in prayer with me, please? Well, Father God, we're just so thankful to come together today, and we want to be careful to ask you to bless our Mayor, Ron Smith. We're thankful, Lord, that we can pass the torch in these United States in such a godly and wonderfully quiet, calm method, just from one mayor to the other. And so we thank you for this new fine council and ask that you would bless each and every member and help all of the populace of our great city to realize that these are the ones that we have voted in to lead us. Help them to not squabble over the decisions because we've entrusted the decisions to these dear leaders. Lord, we also want to thank you for our first responders, our police force, our law enforcement agency, our firefighters, and our EMT people. And we pray that you would keep us all safe and in your care. We thank you for schools and for this season that we can just rejoice and be thankful, and for the time that we can really feel that giving is a part of what we do. So now today we pray that you would bless the ideas and the votes and all of the things that our leaders will take us through, because we prayed in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Barb. If you remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Mr. Dare, would you lead us?
Will do. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to open up the public comment. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak, please fill out a card and give it to the clerk. And Spencer, we're going to do you on 9-4, okay? The first speaker is Peter Kruger. Come on down, Peter. Welcome.
Sir, he wanted to do it for 9-1.
That's 9-1. Oh, you want to wait until 9-1?
But whatever you think.
We'll wait till 9-1. I apologize. I thought we were going to do public speaking. Okay. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Approval of agenda. I would like to move 9.1 and 9.2 after 7.1. Any other changes? Okay, looking for a motion.
I move to.
Go ahead, Mr. Dare.
I move to approve the minutes and move 9.1 up to the front.
We're not on the minutes yet. We're just on the agenda.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I move to approve the agenda and move 9.1 to
Okay.
the front.
9.2
And
as well.
9.2.
Okay, so the motion is to move 9.1 and 9.2 after 7.1. We have a motion. Looking for a second, Mr. Lawson?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll move on to the minutes, Mr. Dare.
Sorry about that.
Consideration and possible approval of minutes for the Sparks City Council meetings for November 13th and November 26th, 2018. Ms. Bybee.
I move to accept the minutes of the Sparks City Council meeting from November 9th and the special meeting on November 13th as submitted.
Okay, it'd be November 13th and November 26th.
Right.
Is that what you said?
I think so.
I thought you said the 9th.
She's on Sydney time.
November 9th, November 9th and November 13th, correct?
No, it's November 13th and November 26th.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
your motion is.
I'm still on Sydney time, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from November 13th and November 26th. We have a motion, Mr. Abbott.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll get on track here. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay. 7.1, presentation, The Generator, the Industrial Arts Studio for Burning Man. Who's here to do the, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, how you doing?
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Eric Shapiro. I'm the development director for
Have a
the
seat, Eric.
Generator. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
I
try to make you comfortable when you're down here.
appreciate that. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Should I pull up my presentation
Sure.
here? I apologize.
It's okay.
Oh, fantastic. F5. Okay, great. So there's our fun little logo. So the Generator, we have been in Sparks since 2013, and I'll actually pop ahead a little bit. So our first 4 years, we didn't charge anyone to use the space. It's a 35,000 square foot warehouse full of tools for people to use. And during this initial phase, we still have the same angel donor, but we had an angel donor that wanted to just support us in producing large-scale public art. And during this phase, over 120 medium to large projects were made, and around 20,000 people used the space over the first 4 years. And all of our training was kind of one-on-one project-based mentorship. So I'll back up. So this place, it could be your second garage, it could be your only garage. In the affordable housing crisis kind of thing, crisis is a strong word, but as we kind of face some growth issues, we found that not everyone can afford a garage. Not everyone can afford the tools that they need to make the projects that they want to make, be it a trailer or or a fine art piece. So we serve architects, engineers, contractors, makers of all sorts, and we want to make it that affordable to people so they can enjoy their lives and have more fulfilling experiences. These are a couple of projects we made for the Burning Man event this year. This is Baba Yaga's house, which is a 2-story little hut on chicken legs made by a local. And the pipes over here on the left side of your screen were made by an international group from Italy and the United Kingdom. And they had a great time doing that. The two projects combined were around $80,000. And all that money goes through this economy, of course. This one is called Bebot. It's a 38-foot kind of cute little robot that was commissioned by another London-based artist who actually paid a fabricator named Andy Tibbetts, who moved here from Portland a few years ago to participate in our movement. He's one of a few hundred high-quality fabricators and contractors that have moved here to participate in this experience. This part I've covered. Here are a few other pieces we made. You might be familiar with the Space Whale, which is in downtown Reno. That project had around 10,000 human hours in on it and around $150,000 in materials. Ends up being around a $1.5 to $2 million object if you add the value of labor into that. The Da Vinci head was purchased by Carson City, of course, and was also produced at the Generator by a Smithsonian represented artist named Michelle Riley. A few others. So they hired me about 1.5 years ago to diversify the revenue model and cultivate long-term sustainability. You might be familiar with my work. I'm the founder of Reno Sculpture Fest and Reno Artworks in Reno, which played a significant role in kind of transforming Dickerson Road and building that into an industrial arts community from what may have been considered a pile of old cars and tires. And so the first thing we kind of came up with was kind of a paid workshop model, just formalizing the mentorship and education that's been happening at the Generator for years, and adding a paid membership model. Both of these things are in place to include more people from the community into the space, just beyond the 500 or so volunteers and artists that we usually work with and had brought together to work with the Burning Man experience. Right now, our sustainability model is working pretty well. We have around 234 registered members. Of those, around 28 are volunteers, and around 40 are just supporting members that just pay nominal monthly rates to support us. Year to date, we've received around 12% of our funding from members, and by November, just last month, we got nearly 41% of our revenue from the paid member model. We do receive around $250,000 a year from the folks who wrote Google AdWords and created the little like button for Facebook. And we're excited to prove to them that Northern Nevada and this region wants us to stay here so that we can continue to cultivate and receive that support. This is a revenue projection. It's kind of cute. We're on track. This is something I'll spare you. You can look over. We can talk about later if you have any questions. But this is actually right around where we are, which is surprising because it seemed kind of bold when we put it together about a year ago. We also have been running we ran formal workshops from December until July. During that time period, we had exactly 881 attendees, averaging 3.67 daily attendees. So it wasn't a whole heck of a lot of people, but it did give us the ability to pay around 20 different instructors $12,000 and raise around $22,000 total. We kind of have them on hold until we can work on the facility a little bit more. And here's just a couple of cute pictures of people using the space. So, yeah, the Burning Man stuff is big and it's interesting and we can get some really amazing images of that. And I'll back up a little. One of the things that came up for me when I worked on my first big Burning Man project in 2011, we made the world's largest freestanding wooden structure called the Temple of Transition. It was the first Burning Man temple ever produced in Northern Nevada. It was around $250,000, and it took the labor of 200 people to produce that over 7 months. It was great. And after coming back from building for a month in the desert, I was the lead ornamental fabricator for that project. I kind of thought, well, that was cool. We just raised $250,000 and got 200 people working together for 70,000 relatively entitled people to enjoy for a week. That was cool. What would happen if we brought that back to something that underprivileged kids could use year-round? And that's sort of what these workshops mean to me. Is it's about getting people in that space. So here, making some pillows in the sewing room, teaching a few people how to do acrylic pours, painting. And this was a hand wood carving workshop. Went over quite well, using hand tools. And then a nice little intro into the metal shop. This reminds me, you see a few females in the picture there. One of my favorite things is getting ladies in the metal shop and getting crusty biker dudes in the sewing room, and just showing people that everybody can do what they want, given access to the right tools and, of course, safety and some instruction. We love participating in some Sparks events. We had the opportunity to support the Northern Nevada Center for Independent Living in Pumpkin Palooza, and helped kind of step up to transition into running the Pumpkin Derby races, as Protofab's done it for like 7 or 8 years, and they're looking to not do that forever. So we had a great time. We had about 10 volunteers come down. You can see a few of our little hoodies and logos. And then we also, I couldn't find any more images, but we brought a handful of pieces to the 39 North Pole event over the weekend. And, we can't wait to do more of that. Also, as the founder of Reno Sculpture Fest, I brought 25,000 people into downtown Reno, generated $1.8 million in related spending in 2015 alone, and actually lobbied really hard to put the Believe sign under the arch. And that was kind of something that just clicked for me. I'm like, there's $1 million photo, let's make it happen. And love to do more of that with Sparks. And I have to say, I apologize for not coming here sooner. So it's quite the pleasure to be here. I have a little bit of information on a potential move we might be doing, but we're going to be in Sparks for at least a few years. And for the sake of time, I think I could probably close it there and open up to any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions or comments? Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, I know I attended that little golf. What was that golf day that I went to?
Oh, yeah, we did a little haunted mini golf course.
So much fun. It was 18 holes of just random, crazy miniature golf, like not normal at all. But it was super neat. Is there anything else coming up, like something like that, or?
We try to do a couple of those a year. We do a little rock and roll show and like a very small. It seems like a big. Everything we do looks big, on Facebook, but it's all kind of humble stuff. But it's a little punk rock flea market. If you're familiar with the punk rock culture, a lot of that has to do with the do-it-yourself kind of theme. So as an outreach to that community that doesn't really get a lot of focused attention. We thought, hey, let's bring some of these kids who are all angsty into the, not people in their 20s really, but bring some of these folks in their 20s into the workshops, and give them some tools and say, hey, you want to make your own little leather jacket? Cool, let's do it. You want to make your own bookshelf? Let's do it. So building that into something a little more constructive. And then we have a couple of bands play, and around like 40 vendors show up. But that'll be in February, and that's a really fun event. Yeah, we try to do 3 or 4 a year, with the intention being, again, just to share the space. This is one of the, if not the top, truly one of the top 5 what they call maker spaces in the entire nation. It's a real gem. I've toured many of them, and there are none quite this large. And so we're just here to really leverage that interest in the whole Burning Man event and bring it back home. So.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
So if I wanted to become a member, how would I do that and how much would it cost me?
You can go onto our website, therenogenerator.com, and it's only $50 a month. So right now we're 70 to 80% subsidized or so, but yeah, so we're only charging $50 because we
You'll
want
teach me how to weld?
Yeah,
Try.
yeah, I can teach you one. I could teach you one on.
I'm an
one-on-one.
old dog for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I got a few mentors that love doing that. We have some open shop hours, and
I think it's a great idea. I like it.
Okay, Mr. Dare.
I want to tell you, I did see your stuff down at 39 North, and it was beautiful. And I think last year you guys had stuff down there as well, or someone did. It looked like stuff
yeah.
at the big table and stuff.
yeah, we
But
got the big table. Yeah, that's
it was, it's awesome. I do want to say, should you have workshops coming up so we can teach them how to weld or things? No, even the woodworking, all that kind of stuff, I think a lot of people would benefit. Is that only members that get to do that, or can public come in and take a class? Because that kind of stuff you don't find that very often anymore.
Right now, we're down to only members until we just sort out a couple of occupancy upgrades. So we're, gratefully and lovingly working with some of your city officials to sort that out, and everybody's doing a great job. We've engaged an architect, and we're kind of figuring out what, if anything, we need to do
Gotcha.
to make that more available. Hopefully, fingers crossed, any day now. My architect kind of likes where we're at, and we just need a little stamp of approval, and we should be good to go.
Thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you so much for coming today. I have been to the generator several years ago and was just blown away. It just was like a giant airplane hangar. I've got to refer to what I do for a living, but I mean, it was huge, and there was so much going on. In every corner, there was, different projects and different activities, and very impressed with what you do there, with the activity, and would love to see, would encourage people to join and to take part, but I would love to see some of your work, maybe partnering up as we're looking at our downtown and as with our Art and Culture Commission. I'm sure Francine is probably working with some of your artists, but I would love to see, I love that Believe sign. I wish it was here in Sparks, but I know that's Reno's. But I would love to see something signature for the city of Sparks, because creativity that you have there and the artists you have are just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it really does something to bring people together. I think, having a meaningful piece of public art or a few, it really enhances one's quality of life. And I've had a few discussions with Francine about what might be possible as far as partnerships, with the city, and we would love to do that, including anything, with city-sanctioned classes and that kind of stuff. I think it would just be phenomenal as this resource is available. I mean, you can't learn how to weld outside of like TMCC's many-month, relatively pricey welding program, and it's worth it. It's a good deal. It's one of the top on the West Coast, actually. But you can't just go in one day and get an intro into welding through that program. So that's something that we are just thrilled to offer as a community service. One thing too that we've added with this paid membership model is more streamlined registration process. So when you walk in, we've got a front desk. We have volunteers and staff people to welcome folks in. So if you went in there a couple of years ago, you probably just saw it would be overwhelming, and there may or may not have been someone there to guide you through the process. So that's kind of part of the formalized process that we've implemented. So thank you so much.
I don't think anybody realized how big Burning Man would become. International people coming in, what is it, up to 80,000 people out there now? That's amazing. So when you have your theme for Burning Man, I know artists tend to be pretty independent. Do you try to keep them on a theme for every year, or you let them just whatever they're inspired to do?
That's a good question. You know, sometimes it just works out, and sometimes the themes are kind of vague. I mean, this year's was like a robot-based theme, and now a lot of people are interested in machinery and robot type works. But yeah, a handful of people did do robots. But some, anything kind of fits. And that's what's most interesting about Burning Man to me. I'm 36 years old. I don't care to party anymore. I don't even like to see my friends' bands play anymore. It's exhausting.
You're getting old.
I mean, well, it's priorities.
Yeah.
I want to stay productive. And so the whole Burning Man thing, it's 70,000 people with 70,000 different interests. And the ones that appeal to our community is, getting your hands dirty and building something and building community around that. So it's a weird place, but it's also a place where there's a lot of opportunity for people to create and for people to experiment with different ideas and make some innovative, architectural engineering and that kind of.
So for the larger pieces, they build it at the generator, tear it down, and then rebuild it out at the desert. Is that right?
Yeah. So what we do
Amazing.
is we like to call it modular, temporary, interactive, and community-based public art.
That's a lot of words for me to remember.
Basically, everything's got to fit on a flatbed.
There you go.
So we kind of make it an 8x8 or so cube so that or max you can go, it's 12 and a half without a wide load permit.
Okay.
So it comes down to like transportation and logistics.
Amazing projects and pretty talented people to come up with some of this stuff. Thank you so much for coming down and giving us a presentation. And we've got a blossoming arts commission now in the city of Sparks, so I'm sure Francine will be working with you and anybody else.
Francine is doing a very good job.
Don't tell her that.
I'm
She's
also
ready.
I'm the co-chair for the Reno Arts Consortium as well, so I get to follow a lot of this
Good.
stuff.
She's doing a great job.
I see it very closely. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming down.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna move up 9.1 and 9.2. I'll read 9.1 and then I'll open it up for public comment. 9.1 is discussion, candidate interviews, and possible confirmation of an appointment by the mayor to fill the vacancy of Sparks City Council Ward 3 from the following list of candidates listed in alphabetical order: Paul Anderson and Andrea Taverner. So I'm gonna open up the public comment right now. I do have one speaker. Anybody else wishing to speak, please fill out a card. Peter Kruger, come on down. Welcome, sir.
Mayor Smith, members of the council, I'm Peter Kruger, the Executive Director of the Nevada Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association. And I'm here this afternoon to speak in favor of Mr. Paul Anderson for your open position on the city council. I'd like to share a few thoughts about Mr. Anderson. I've known Mr. Anderson for more than 10 years. We've worked together professionally in his capacity as a petroleum wholesaler and seeing that we all have fuel when we need it and where we need it. I've also, and I think equally important, worked with Paul as a member and now chairman of the State Board of Agriculture. Now, you might wonder, well, what does a petroleum person have to do with bees and cows and things of that nature, dairies? The State Board of Agriculture is responsible for the fuel quality of all the gallons of diesel, gas, ethanol, all the liquid products that come into our region. And they oversee with lab and whatnot. So I've worked with Paul. We haven't always agreed because there are times regulations, there are issues that come up that the industry may have a different position than the Board of Agriculture and the chairman. So we haven't always worked together, but I've always found Paul to be fair, to be honest, to be a forthright individual. And I think that's what my dealings with Mr. Anderson at the State Board of Agriculture have really shown me over all these years. So really, in my judgment, my experience in these two arenas with Mr. Anderson, I know him to be a person who listens. He, in my experience, has considered all all points before he makes a decision. And I believe that Mr. Anderson will bring the same qualities, professionalism, and leadership and compassion to the Sparks City Council should he be selected. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wishing to speak at this time? Oh, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. The process that we put in place is actually a process that I put in place. It's the mayor's selection, and then I asked for confirmation from the city council. So the two members that we have here today, or the two candidates, is Paul Anderson and Andrea Tavener. What I'm going to ask them, each one of them to do is come down, speak for 5 minutes or so, tell us about themselves and why they'd like to be a member of our city council. And I'll go in the same direction as alphabetical order, so I'll have Mr. Anderson come on down first. Welcome, Paul. You dress up nicely.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I first off want to just say thank you very much for allowing me to come before you. Or move closer to it. One of the two. I want to say thank you very much for allowing me to be here. It's truly an honor to be considered for this position. City of Sparks is an incredible team, and I really look forward to being a part of that, be it today or in 2 years. So thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, so you're going to run in 2 years if you don't get this position.
Yes, sir.
That's always good to know. So, Paul, why do you want to be on the council?
Well, I was born and raised in this area, and so obviously I have an investment in living here, working here. We've raised our family here, and then likewise, what's fortunate is the business that I've managed. We were located in our city that I think you guys refer to our little sister to the west. And as we were growing and looking to expand, we had the opportunity to look in other areas, and I found that City of Sparks was easy to do business with and was able to move the business here. And now it's thriving, succeeding as a company. And I believe that that's part of what Sparks is all about. And that's where I want to be involved, make sure that we're moving that same direction, whether it's someone that wants to look for a place to live, a business, or someone that just wants to visit our community. I want to make sure that we actually do hold to that city of choice and being that place. But yeah, I feel I'm very well qualified for the position because of my background in business. I've literally been involved in every side of a business, from the human resources, sales and marketing, finance and administration, every single part of it, including the operations. So that kind of background comes into play very well as a council member, being able to understand profit and loss statements and understand equipment and things like that when it comes to the operations side. So I really feel that that has me well suited. The other thing, and as Mr. Kruger was nice enough to point out, is my position on the Board of Agriculture. I was appointed in 2008 by Governor Gibbons and have since been reappointed on 3 occasions by Brian Sandoval. And so I'm in my 4th term, which normally it's 2 years that you serve, but I've been fortunate to be called upon to serve the state of Nevada for 4 terms. And as he said, I am chairman of the board. What's interesting about that board is that it's different from any other within our state, in the sense that not only is it policy regulation, and it has a budget of $220 million, but we also have unique positions of hiring the cabinet member for the governor. So we deal with some very sensitive issues, anything from wild horses, feral estray horses here in the Virginia Range, to water and things like that. So we're very deep in the community, and likewise dealing with some topics that can be tough to make a solid decision on. And I really believe that as I've proven on that board, I have the ability to serve here likewise, listening to the individuals, whether it's the public, a stakeholder in a matter, or the other agencies, I really feel that I have that ability to listen and then make a good sound decision, like you all do on a daily basis. With that, I think that's pretty much all I would have to say, but like I said, I look forward to working with you guys no matter when that time is.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Any questions for me?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you.
Andrea, come on down. You dress up well too, Andrea. I didn't mean to.
Whoops. At least I didn't face plant. I was worried about that. Okay, well, good afternoon, Mayor, council members. I also wanted to thank you for this opportunity, regardless, and I apologize if I talk really fast for the record. When I get nervous, sometimes I have a tendency to do that, and my voice might go a couple octaves higher. I feel very fortunate to be a part of this process and to have been given this opportunity. So regardless of the outcome, whether it's favorable for me or not, I appreciate the opportunity, so thank you very much. As my application showed, I've been a resident of the city of Sparks for over 47 years, and I chose to raise my family here and to call it home. Bottom line is I love this city. I love the residents, and I feel that everyone should have a say in government. I have experience working with not only the business community and other elected officials and regional and other entities. I also have had the fortune of working very closely with those that really didn't have a voice, and really being able to listen to them and try and find solutions for their problems. Working for the county manager's office, I was charged with facilitating and coordinating meetings for the general public that ranged from 10 to several hundreds on topics that were not so easy to discuss, but that people were very passionate about. I have the ability to listen, and I've been able to demonstrate that over my decades of employment and with my volunteer service. I love the city, and I want to make a difference for not only the current residents, but generations to come.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea. Any other comments?
Do you have any questions at all for me? I hope I remember to
We're going to have, after we make a motion, everything, we'll have comments or questions from the council, but
Okay.
we don't want to convolute anything here. And
All right.
so, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this
And
opportunity.
now we'll get down
I
to the
appreciate it.
decision-making time.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we're down to the two candidates, and I just want to say there were 7 people that applied for this position, all of them very good candidates, and it was tough for me to make the calls to tell them that I whittled it down to 2 people, and that they didn't make it. And any one of them was qualified to be a council member for the city of Sparks. So it was tough to make that phone call, but it was something I felt we needed to do. And to get it down to 2 was even tougher, but we've got 2 great candidates here, and I just want to thank everybody that applied. Terry, I see you out there. Thank you so much. Everybody that applied, it just says that there's a lot of people that care about this city and care enough to want to help be part of what we do up here. So what I will do is I'm going to announce my pick, and then I'll be looking for a motion from the council to confirm or not my pick. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being here today. Paul, thank you so much for being here today. And my pick for Ward 3 council member is Paul Anderson. Paul, come on down. Have a seat there, Paul, and then looking for a motion to confirm my pick. Mr. Lawson.
I move to uphold the mayor's choice of Paul Anderson for Ward 3 seat.
Okay, we have a motion. Look for a second. Mr. Dare.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second now. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, it passes 3-1 with Ms. Bybee being the no vote. So congratulations, Paul. You're now the council member. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get you up here. I'm gonna read you the oath of office, and then we'll seat you right here next to me, between me and Ed. Okay, come on up. Move that chair out of the way. Okay. You raise your right hand, that hand. We're in trouble already.
Yeah.
I state your name,
I, Paul Anderson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States,
the Constitution and government of the United States,
the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and I will bear true faith and allegiance
and loyalty to the same.
and loyalty to the same,
Any ordinance, resolution, or law
and any ordinance, resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
pursuant to section 1.110 of the Sparks City Charter,
pursuant to section 1.110,
1.110
Close enough. It looks so easy when you listen to it.
of the Sparks City Charter.
Of the Spark City Charter.
I swear and affirm
I swear and affirm
that I am not under any direct or indirect obligation to vote for,
that I am not under any direct or indirect obligation to vote for,
appoint, or elect any person to any office,
appoint, or elect any person to office,
position, or employment in the city government,
position, or appointment in the city government,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and I will well and faithfully perform
all the duties of council member
all the duties of a council member
for the city of Sparks,
for the city of Sparks,
County of Washoe,
County of Washoe,
State of Nevada,
State of Nevada,
on which I am about to enter,
and on which I'm about to enter.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Councilman. We get a picture of the council and Mr. Manager? And then we can get a picture of you and your wife. Frame it.
Turn a little bit.
Okay.
We get some beef up here.
Yeah, we get the beef up here. No.
Bigger.
That side of the room is starting to go down. Thank you. Okay, Paul, we'll get you a chair.
I don't know which one was who. I think this might be mine. I think this is mine, yours is still there.
Okay, so we'll get going here and then, okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
You want to take a 2-minute recess?
Yeah, well, let's take a 2-minute recess and Paul can visit with his wife and his family over there and. Okay.
just always gets awkward when I'm at the podium and they're waiting for me to speak.
Sure,
and
of course.
There's always some technical error.
It doesn't like that. It doesn't like the disc.
Oh, I think it's just asking, do you want to scan or not scan? You can go without scanning. So it's just that PowerPoint, yep.
So I'm gonna save it to the desktop for you.
Perfect.
It's gonna be hanging out right there.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order, please. We'll move on to consent items. Anybody want to pull an item or to talk about it, or Ed, no, Mr. Lawson?
Make a motion to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.5.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second, Mr. Abbott.
Second that.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Boy, you get right into that, didn't you? Names up on the board, everything already.
I like the little green around your.
Yeah, I'm looking a little pale.
That's the
in that
best
shot.
picture you've ever taken.
And actually, if I could, I just,
Yeah, green light means go. You gotta hit it really hard.
okay.
You gotta mean it.
Want to say thank you to our city manager for taking time with us as candidates to make sure we understood what was on the agenda. I definitely would not have felt comfortable coming straight up here and making some of these decisions. So thank you for taking the time.
Okay, 9.3, consideration and possible approval to purchase one fire ladder truck from Graham Fire Apparatus Rosenbauer in the amount of $941,290. Mr. Corman,
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith,
welcome.
members of the council. Paul, welcome. Ron Corman, your Public Works Manager, for the record. Today I'm before you to request spending authority to spend $941,000 and a little bit more to purchase a 78-foot ladder truck with pump for the fire department. Fire Department Community Services have worked closely over the last 6 months to precisely define the requirements for this truck, and we have also decided to continue to use Rosenbauer, who has been the vendor for the last few fire truck purchases that we've had. In fiscal year 14, a 15-year plan was introduced to replace the fire department's fleet of engines and ladders, and to do so by paying for these assets in cash. This purchase represents the fourth installment in this plan. The current fiscal year, or in this current fiscal year, $600,000 has been budgeted for this purchase. The balance of the purchase will be budgeted in fiscal year 20. The reason for this is that the truck will take over 1 year to build, and that by entering into the contract with Rosenbauer today, we will lock in the price at today's rate, and the $600,000 by paying that up front will make us eligible for some several discounts. In summary, by entering into this contract, we'll be able to take delivery of this equipment approximately 6 months sooner, and we'll be able to save up to $68,000 between inflation and the offered discounts. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, I want to say, I think this is one of the best decisions we made as a council up here is to pay cash for fire engines. We had fire engines were 15 years old that we were leasing at one point there. And we cut off all those leases. Now we pay cash discounts. I love to hear that word. And 6 months sooner, even better. So good choice. Good job on managing the fund also, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dare?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for continuing to find ways to save money. I know we're dipping in a sense of looking to the future, but we know that money is going to be there. And so if anybody's wondering, how do we overspend? We really don't spend money we don't have. That's a big thing for us, but this is money in the budget. And so very supportive of finding the best ways. $68,000 is a lot of money when it comes down to it, of things we can have many needs for. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So where's their factory at?
Their factory's in Minnesota.
So do we send a crew back to drive that truck back, don't we?
No, sir.
They
They
ship it?
deliver it back, but we do send crews, a few people there throughout the build process to ensure that we're getting what we're asking for and being able to do a final inspection before they actually ship it out to us.
You know,
And that's all included in the price of the
Okay.
truck.
And Mr. Lawson's correct. I love the way the city of Sparks pays cash for these. We made that decision quite a few years ago, and we're sticking by it, and it's a fiscal responsibility, and I love that part about it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
I move to approve the purchase of one fire ladder from Graham Fire Apparatus Rosenbauer in the amount of $941,290.
Okay, I have a motion looking for a second. Ms. Bybee?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, 9.4, consideration possible approval of a tentative map for a 69-unit multifamily residential townhome subdivision on site 7.72 acres in size in the MF2 PUD located at 2255 Los Altos Parkway, Sparks, Nevada. Ian, I'm going to have, I always say Ian. Ian, I'm going to have some public comment, first of all.
You want to do it first?
Yeah, I'll do it first. Okay, I'm going to open up public comment for 9.4. Anybody wishing to speak, fill out a card, please. Spencer Erickson, come on down, Spencer. Welcome.
I'd like to use the camera if that's possible.
And you have 3 minutes, Spencer.
Thank you. There's just two things I'd like to speak about today. The first one relates to the pedestrian flashers that are in the one of the conditions of approval of this plan. There's a letter from Traffic Works that called out some traffic improvements as part of the plan. Those were conditioned as condition 16 on the approval. And this was addressing a long held concern in the community when this development was proposed about pedestrian safety of kids crossing the roundabout or crossing Los Altos coming from Bud Beasley. In the community, the expectation was always that the flashing lights would be here at the roundabout. Unfortunately, in the Traffic Works letter, what they're recommending is the flashers be installed here at Goodwin Drive. And the reason this is a problem is that the issue we're trying to address is not general pedestrian safety along the parkway. It's the very specific case of students leaving Bud Beasley, walking up to Los Altos. They go uphill here, and they cross at that crosswalk right at the roundabout to go to any of these houses in this area or even up Vista Heights. The reason this is a problem is that when drivers are coming up the hill, when they approach this roundabout, they're looking left to see if there's any traffic coming down Vista Heights and going through the roundabout, and they don't see kids that are waiting here on the sidewalk and trying to cross. So we've seen lots of near misses. We've talked to the lady that lives in this house. She's seen and heard tires screeching and a lot of close calls with kids. So the desire for a flasher was to try and address that situation. We brought this issue up at the Planning Commission last month. Angela talked to the logic of why the traffic engineer had recommended it at Goodwin, and it had to do with slowing traffic down, that they assumed that the traffic coming into the roundabout was naturally slowed, and that at Goodwin, that's where they wanted the flashers. But there's really no safety concern there. There's a good line of sight up and down the road at Goodwin. When people try and cross there, my wife and I cross there a lot. We've never had any issues. It's really the concern of the lack of visibility and the distraction of drivers looking at oncoming traffic into the roundabout that we're trying to address. So if you don't feel comfortable conditioning that change of location tonight, I would hope that you'd at least put a note in on the conditions to either revisit that or to look deeper into that problem to address that issue. As I said, as it's written in the approval, it calls for all the traffic improvements to be created per the letter from TrafWorks. Right now, that would require it to be a Goodwin, which for the community members is not an issue and not what we would like. The second item I talked to in 15 seconds has to do with construction hours. Given that this development is happening in the middle of a very mature development, the standard development hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday are going to be very invasive for the 2 years the construction is going to be ongoing. So if there's any way to narrow those hours as a condition of this project to something more reasonable like 8 to 6 or 9 to 5, there would be a good way to minimize the impact to the surrounding longtime residents. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else in the audience wish to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it.
Mr. Wagner.
Oh, Bill, come on down, Bill. Little church mouse over there.
I hope I'm dressed nicely. What do you think?
You look great.
Your hair
You
looks-
dress up well.
Nice haircut.
This was a surprise for me to talk about this development. Now, I know I've lost this argument many a times with you folks, but it comes to cars, okay? There's no parking. What happens if every 69 units has 4 cars in every spot? Okay? They have no driveways. Where are those other 4 cars going to go? That's the question I have for you folks. I hope you'll hear me on this one because it's very important that we don't have cars parking all over the world up there on the top of the hill, okay? So maybe you guys can at least watch it and make sure that these folks do it right, okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill, appreciate it.
All right.
And fill out a card with Teresa. if
Yeah,
you would.
well, I filled one out, but I want to speak again too.
Okay. All right, anybody else in the audience wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Ian, come on down. Welcome. These are keys to your desk in the office. That's to the door, to the office. That is to
Mayor Smith, members of the City Council, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. This item is a request to approve a tentative map for 69 unit multifamily residential townhome subdivision. The site that you can see here on the vicinity map, here outlined in cyan, is 7.72 acres in size and is located at 2255 Los Altos Parkway in the Vistas Plan Development. The Vistas Plan Development was approved in 1988, at which time this area was designated as multifamily. In July 2018, the site was rezoned to MF2 PUD in accordance with the development procedures outlined in the handbook. The rezoning was accompanied by a development agreement. The development agreement limited the maximum number of units to 75 units and required that the units be attached townhomes. The development agreement also addressed improvements the developer must construct, including some that are off-site, and requires that the site and buildings be constructed in conformance with the multifamily design standards of the MF2 zoning district and the design standards of the Vistas Plan Development Handbook. Today, my presentation will address the requirements of the plan development or the development agreement, in addition to the findings typically associated with a tentative map. On November 1st, 2018, the Planning Commission reviewed this item and recommended the City Council approve this tentative map. The development agreement permits a maximum of 75 units. The applicant is requesting 69. The maximum number of units permitted by the zoning district without the development agreement would be 108 units. The proposed development will have direct access from Los Altos. Los Altos Parkway was designed to accommodate the volume of traffic that will be generated by this development. The applicant submitted a traffic analysis based on the 108 units that were the maximum allowed without the development agreement. At 108 units, the development did not generate the 80 peak hour trips typically used to trigger the requirement for a traffic analysis. But due to concerns about traffic being brought up throughout the rezoning process, the applicant submitted a traffic study of their own volition. The applicant's traffic study, based on that maximum 108 units, estimated the development would generate 627 daily trips with 48 AM peak hour trips and 56 PM peak hour trips. These numbers would obviously be lower at 69 units. The streets within the subdivision will be private. A homeowners association will be created to maintain all streets and common areas. The private ownership and maintenance of on-site utilities and common areas is required as on the final map. As part of the final map submittal, the developer must provide the city with a report for the Canyon subdivision that includes the following: an estimate on the cost to maintain, repair, replace, or restore all privately owned streets, sidewalks, and utilities within the subdivision, an estimate on the total annual assessment for the subdivision's property owners that may be necessary to cover the cost of maintaining, repairing, replacing, or restoring the privately owned streets, sidewalks, or utilities, and a plan to provide adequate funding to cover these costs. The report is subject to city review and approval prior to the recordation of the final map, and the report must be complete by a person who is registered to conduct reserve studies pursuant to NRS Chapter 116A. The applicant also submitted a letter that Mr. Erickson alluded to from Traffic Works. They recommended 3 off-site site operation and safety improvements based on the traffic analysis. Condition 16 of the proposed conditions of approval would require this. Those improvements are to construct the 4th leg. I'll move into the switch to the tentative map. The 4th leg of this of the roundabout would need to be constructed, which is essentially the entrance to this site. Number 2 is that improved westbound and northbound sight lines would need to be addressed. That was mostly an issue of cutting back overgrown landscaping and contouring some stuff. That would be the north going up Vista Heights and the west going on Los Altos. And then 3, as he mentioned, would be the installation of pedestrian flashers down here just off the page on Goodwin. There are 12 findings associated with a tentative map. Finding T1 looks for conformance to the comprehensive plan. This tentative map would support goal H2 to promote strong and diverse housing market. Policy C4, that sidewalks and pedestrian infrastructure be provided. Policy CF1, that city services can be provided at acceptable levels, and policy H2, which is to provide a variety of housing types. The project would advance goal H2 and policy H2 providing townhomes, which differ from traditional single-family and apartment homes, the predominant housing types in Sparks. Townhomes are a housing product identified in the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency's 2016 housing study as one of the missing middle housing types needed in the Truckee Meadows. The tentative map shows sidewalks throughout the development and connecting to pedestrian infrastructure along Los Altos Parkway, complying with policy C4. The infrastructure serving the site, including roads, water, and sanitary sewer facilities, are designed to support multifamily development on the site, and the city sewer model shows sufficient capacity to serve the 69 proposed townhomes complying with policy CF1. Finding T2, conformance with the streets master plan. Traffic associated with this development of the site for multifamily residents was considered with the review and approval of the Vistas Plan Development Handbook. The tentative map does not change the traffic patterns or generate trips exceeding the planned capacity for the surrounding streets. Finding T3, environmental health laws were considered. The application was distributed to agencies that provide basic services and administer environmental health laws. The Washoe County School District and Regional Transportation Commission provided comments. The developer will have to comply with requirements of outside agencies with regulatory authority over the tentative maps, including specifically the Washoe County Health District prior to the recordation of a final map. Finding T4, availability of water. The developer has estimated domestic water requirement for this proposed development at 18.11 acre feet per year. The water rights needed to serve the project will be in place or be dedicated with the final map. Finding T5, availability of utilities. Developers estimated the sewage flows for the development to be 8,970 gallons per day. The city sewer model shows sufficient capacity to serve the 69 proposed townhomes, but the applicant will be required to provide evidence that there is adequate sewer capacity to serve the project prior to the recordation of a final map. The grading and drainage plan for the development must be reviewed and approved by the city engineer prior to the recordation of the final map of the project. Finding T6 addresses the availability of public services such as schools and emergency response. Addressing schools, this proposed development will add, per the Washoe County School District's letter in response, they are anticipating it will add 3 new students at Beasley Elementary, 1 new student at Mendive Middle School, and 1 new student at Reed High School. Police and fire services will be provided by the Sparks Police and Fire Departments, and the site is within the 6-minute response time for the fire department. Finding T7, effect on streets. As mentioned earlier, the development will not exceed the design capacity of Los Altos Parkway, as Los Altos Parkway was designed with this kind of a development in mind. Finding T8, characteristics of the land were considered. A slope analysis was performed and submitted to this by the applicant for this site. The slope analysis calculated that a maximum of 6.69 acres of the site is allowed to be disturbed. This proposal would disturb 6.64 acres, would therefore be in compliance with Sparks Municipal Code Section 20.04.011. This site does not contain any protected hilltops or ridgelines. And then finding T9, comments from outside agencies have been considered. We received comments from Washoe County Schools and the Regional Transportation Commission, and their comments have been incorporated into the staff report as appropriate. Finding T10, availability of fire protection. As I mentioned earlier, this site is within the 6-minute response time for Sparks Fire Department. Finding T11, addressing identified impacts. This project is subject to all the limitations and requirements of the development agreement, that is condition 17 and the proposed conditions of approval. The development agreement requires that a minimum of 1.54 acres of the site be reserved as open space. That accounts for 20% of the site. The preliminary landscape plan submitted with the tentative map indicates that 1.74 acres will be landscaped as commonly owned open space areas, which satisfies this requirement. Landscaping within the project will be regulated by the standards or the MF2 zoning district, as well as Sparks Municipal Code Section 20.04.006. That's the landscaping and screening section. The tentative map includes conceptual plans for common pedestrian and street areas, including areas along Los Altos Parkway. Common areas within the development will be maintained by the Homeowners Association. A condition of the tentative map requires that final landscape plans to be submitted with the final map and approved prior to the recordation of a final map. And then lastly, architecture. The design standards for the MF2 zoning district will govern the architecture for this project. And then finally, finding T12, public notice. Public notice for tentative maps is accomplished through the posting of the agenda for a public meeting. The Planning Commission and City Council meetings function as public meetings for these items. For this item, during the rezoning process, the citizen did request that they be notified of all land use entitlement action pertaining to the site, and a copy of this agenda was mailed to that individual. As I mentioned at the beginning of my report, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this item, and that is the end of my presentation. I am available for any questions that the City Council may have.
Okay, any questions or comments? Ms. Bybee.
Ian, so in regards to the traffic work study and the flashing light, I agree with Mr. Erickson. This is my neighborhood right up the street from me, and Goodwin is not a problem. I mean, I know that the traffic engineers are looking at it with a different thought process of slowing traffic down, but people aren't crossing Los Altos up at that Goodwin intersection. They're coming from Goodwin right down on the same side of the street, especially kids going to school. When your kids are coming out of Bud Beasley, and both my kids went to Bud Beasley, they're heading up that hill, and there's so much so much housing, and that roundabout, which is a small roundabout anyway, is really the danger point that I'm really concerned about, and I've had concerns with this project because of that roundabout and additional traffic. So how can we, I don't know if I need to ask Cheryl on this, I'm not okay with the traffic flasher being a good one. I would like to see it move down to the roundabout where I think provides the better safety that my residents and that I feel is important for us to provide. And I don't know how that can happen or if it can. So give me some help here. Or if Amber.
Yeah, Amber Sosa, the transportation manager, may be able to better address the specific concerns about that, the location of the flashers. Now, obviously, the city council can change the recommended conditions of approval to whatever you'd like them to be. But I think hearing from Amber first, and then we would be happy to help you figure out how to craft those conditions to be the way that you feel most comfortable with them. But she may need to address that first, I believe.
Mayor Smith, members of council, Amber Sosa, transportation manager. To make a flasher work in the location, you'd be looking at the west approach of that roundabout. You'd need to put a flasher on every leg of that roundabout. So you'd be looking at adding 4, not just 1 flasher. The way that I read Traffic Works report is they intended for the flasher to be at Goodwin because that is where the multi-use path switches from the north side of the road to the south side. So you had a larger number of pedestrians actually using that, where the crosswalk that we're talking about now with the kids on the side, it would truly just be the children who are walking to Bud Beasley. Again, definitely a safety concern, but to make that roundabout work with the flashers, you'd be looking to require 4 flashers, not just 1.
Because you would need one on each corner, on each entrance to it's not just a flasher that's even 2 directions, it would have to be all 4?
Yeah, to ensure that the sight lines and that the vehicles approaching could see that and understand where the pedestrians are. Yeah, you'd need to put a flasher and activated, and they'd work together. They would be activated and synchronized together to make that work.
Do we have intersections in town, in Sparks or in the region, where there are 4 flashers at a very busy intersection like this? And that roundabout is a small roundabout, and people drive it crazy. People drive too fast anyway. But I mean, I'm in that roundabout, and even just with cars, no pedestrians, just the cars going through that is a crazy roundabout to be on. But the kids and other pedestrians, because the Greenbelt, everyone who lives in the Vistas walks that Greenbelt. So it isn't just kids. You know, it's people walking with dogs, people walking with strollers, just people getting exercise. You get a lot of pedestrian traffic up and down that walkway. Is there another 4-way flasher that you can think of? Is that something that is feasible?
It's definitely feasible to put a flasher on. It would be up to whether we would want to demand that on the developer to install 4 of them. I believe that was actually an addition the developer was suggesting that they would be willing to put in. I'm not convinced that the traffic letter required them to install that.
I'd have to look at that letter.
We'd have to look at that again, but I believe that it was something that the developer wanted to put out there to further enhance safety of it. So moving it would be asking them for more.
So if it was moved, my concern is at the roundabout. So I wouldn't think that the Goodwin one would even be necessary if you did it, which I guess in this case would be 4 at the roundabout, then the Goodwin would not be necessary. Just my opinion of where you're going to try to slow down the traffic.
Traditionally in the
You
past,
wouldn't do it in both because you don't have flashers that close together, correct?
we've traditionally in the past, we've followed the TRB, the Transportation Research Board, and we've also looked to NDOT for guidance as far as when installing those type of flashers are appropriate. Those are usually done based on pedestrian volume and a combination of traffic volume. So I don't know that off the top of my head, but we could look at what would be appropriate and what would not. But yes, usually you don't put them back to back.
Okay.
The requirement for the rapid flashers, the pedestrian flashers, is a suggested requirement of the transportation letter from Traffic Works. So it is something that they're saying should be required at the Goodwin location.
Okay. Mr. Martini, can you have anything you need to add to this for me?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple of comments as I listen to the discussion and potential future deliberations that I'd like to bring to your attention. First off, we have a letter from a registered engineer rendering a professional opinion as to where this traffic control pedestrian safety device should be. And then secondarily, if you are going to consider modifying the condition to provide flashers within the roundabout, which you certainly can, we also come up with the famous area that I take you every now and again. I always get to be the bearer of bad news, and that is the nexus and proportionality argument about takings from a developer or extractions in this case. I would argue or recommend as your community services director that if you are going to give consideration to requiring the developer to put pedestrian flashers on all four legs of this intersection, that their responsibility will be for one, and the city of Sparks will likely be responsible to fund the other three legs as there is an existing condition today. And they are bringing a proportional amount of new traffic to this roundabout and paying for one flasher, which is the recommendation from their traffic engineer. We would meet the nexus and proportionality argument, but please be aware that if you do want to have the roundabout flashered at all four legs, the developer will likely be responsible for one, and we will pay for the other three.
Can you give me an estimate on cost?
Mr. Erickson or Amber, they're more dialed in on current costs.
Members of council, Amber Sosa, Transportation Manager. I think that you'd be looking to spend between $5,000 to $10,000 per flasher. And what those would be the side-mounted flashers with the pedestrian activated button that flash them when activated.
And you said they're synchronized, so if you hit one of them, all four flashers are activated so that no matter what direction you're coming from, you know that there's pedestrians going across one of the legs.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dare.
So I've had concerns about the traffic on that from the beginning. So this conversation is ongoing. Couple of things, and I'm obviously not an engineer, and I don't try to tell engineers how to do what they do. I do know when the owners were here and we talked the first time, they said they would do whatever's needed, whatever it needed to be, make sure it was safe. They even talked about having possible of two. So I don't question what the Goodwin slide, if they see that as a problem coming, I think that that's wise. But we do have a school over here, and if we, and I don't believe parents are making up the stories of what is happening over here, and we have kids going home. This is a very important area. I'm a little confused why they can't take it down to Canyon Parkway. Why are we trying to why do we have to do it at the roundabout where it becomes so problematic? I get, that sounds crazy to flash this whole thing. It would look like, but why, I mean, we have roads, other places that it doesn't have to be on that particular thing. They can cross down here by the school and then walk up, and then you're not putting it on all four. But I can tell you, in my opinion, I think the owners of this property, I get that there might be something to traffic engineers that they can get, this is what they have to do, or get the least amount, but they didn't promise that. They told me when they sat here, I believe, that they would make sure that this was what was needed. And so, though I appreciate Mr. Martini saying that means it's our responsibility, but I'd have to disagree with that, because that's not what they even told me. And if I came back and we were just making something happen that we didn't already talk about, but that's not what happened. We sat here, we talked about it. This was part of something. We had everybody in here. We stood moving forward with what is happening. So I just think there's a wisdom that needs to be here. Students won't walk to Goodwin. We know that. They're not going to. You know, the ones that live up there will. You're going to have kids trying to jump across that street to get to their street. We know that. And I'm not talking about, it doesn't matter if it's one car coming and one kid, the kid will lose every time. So to me, when I look at that, this is not about, oh, you have 800 cars over here, but over here, if it cannot be seen and we have kids crossing, there's a mistake or something here that's gonna be made, and it can't be at a kid's life. So, I'm done, thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
So I'm very familiar with this intersection in that that's where I live and pass through it multiple times a day. Like Councilman Bybee, I'm very concerned about the safety there at that roundabout. It's a beautiful roundabout, but as she said, I think people want to pretend that they're Mario Andretti and see how quickly they can pass through it. And there are sight line issues there that, as the traffic engineer pointed out, I'll be honest, there have been 2 occasions in my time living up there that I've almost hit someone because you're looking to the left and moving to the right just to find setback as someone getting ready to cross the street there. So whether or not it's the developer's issue that's adding traffic to it or the fact that it's there, it is a safety concern of mine. What I'm curious about, and I'm not sure who would be the best to answer this, but if we were to put a flashing light on every corner, I mean, to me, none of us went through roundabout training 101, so there already is confusion at a roundabout. My concern is if we put 4-way flashers on, that now everyone's gonna not know what to do. So is there someone that can address that, someone that's knowledgeable in the traffic side of it that can help me understand that?
The way that I would address that would be the flasher that you would see would be the rectangle flasher with the pedestrian, and underneath is the 2 flashers. So what that to me is indicating as a driver is that look up, be aware there could be pedestrian activity right there. So with those on each corner, which would be placed at the crosswalks, I think that drivers would look to that as we need to look for pedestrians in. As far as if they looked at that as a traffic signal, I think that would be clear because they're not overhead, they're not the three light mounted that you typically see. I think that it would be quite a bit different. So I'm not sure. I think that they would get used to it. We could also work with our outreach as far as should they go in to help educate drivers to be aware of changes in the roads. We do that quite often through construction projects and through other new installations to alert drivers that, hey, something's changing, please be aware. So I think that there's ways that we could help with the confusion of whatever you guys choose to require. I'm not quite sure if that answered everything.
Somewhat.
Okay.
So we already have a flasher on Los Altos, south of Goodwin. And that flasher tells everybody that there's a crosswalk ahead. Is that correct? That's what it's saying. Be aware, because there was no crosswalk there a couple years ago.
Do we have one south?
We don't have anything
I don't believe that we have one on Los Altos.
There's a crosswalk from Goodwin across the street. To the other side of the street.
Oh, yes, there's a crosswalk
And
because
there's a
the
flasher,
multi-use path.
there's a flasher before you get to that crosswalk saying that there's a crosswalk there.
I don't believe so, sir.
I think there is.
You're outvoted.
Okay. I'm gonna go check it, but I
I'm gonna drive it
really do think
tonight,
there is.
yes.
But I think the idea of the flasher is to warn people what's ahead. I think if you put them in the roundabout, you're too late. I really think you need to have it before then. That's my opinion. In my opinion, it doesn't matter because I don't get to vote. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I'm gonna go up there. I'm sure there's a flasher up there. Maybe it's I'm old. Mr. Dare.
Can you answer, I mean, again, maybe you're not the engineer who put this together, so they came up with their best. And I get it, the traffic's coming down, they probably saw that as true. And again, whoever that engineer is, props to you, I'm sure you did a good job. But I'm saying for what we're talking about, why can't we put one down on Canyon Parkway?
I believe that the reason that it's not on Canyon Parkway is that stretch of road has a multi-use path that's only on one side of the road.
Okay.
So from the Vista Heights roundabout down to Canyon Parkway, the path is on the south side of the road. So there is no way really for pedestrians to walk on the north side unless they're walking in the bike or part. Yeah.
Thank you, that was my question.
Ms. Bybee.
I think we need the 4. And $5,000, whether the developer does all 4 of them for us, or whether they do 2 of them, or I don't think we can put a price on the safety. And I look at it as other, like out here by some of our intersections, like in Sparks Boulevard, that has, it's that type of flasher, right? That notifies you that someone's going to be coming across the crosswalk. And it makes you stop, it makes you aware of what's in the crosswalk. And I think the safety aspect of that for all of our residents, for the kids specifically, but like I said, there's so many people that are walking up and down that green belt and that are crossing over with dogs, with kids, elderly people. I mean, it's used so much. I think the 4 in that roundabout, since we're adding another leg to it, and it's not all just this development that's causing the problem. The roundabout is a problem to begin with, and this is adding one more leg to it. So I think I would like to see, and whether that is additional cost to the city, we can figure out how we would pay for it if we do, but I would like to see 4 flashers and not have the flasher on Goodwin. So I don't know if I need to make a motion to
Well, I want to,
amend the.
where's the attorney? He's gone?
No, sorry, checking on something.
Okay, are we agendized to make the changes now, or are we?
I believe the alternatives that were offered by staff were to add conditions.
See what she says.
So we should add that in the
I
motion?
believe if it's council's prerogative to add a condition into approval.
Okay.
I believe, if I can speak up, Ian Crittenden for the record, senior planner, you would need to amend condition 16 and probably add a condition 18, if that's what you wanted to do. Would probably be most prudent to maybe take a brief recess and get the wording to that laid out so you're not trying to craft it on the fly.
How long do you need?
Maybe 10, 15 minutes?
How about 10?
10? Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, not to tell you how to do this, but if that's the only concern that we want to address with it, that's fine, but if there was other questions or concerns or potential other amendments or other additions of conditions, maybe we should go through all that and then we can try to do all of that together.
Okay, I'll ask the council if there are any other conditions, Ms. Spivey.
I did have one more question on the parking situation. And I'm looking at the map here, 2-car garages, but is it correct that there is no driveway?
That
So
is correct.
The residents will only be parking in the garage,
Correct.
and then additional parking,
There would be
some parking.
Some additional parking as well. Let's get the tentative map up and I'll kind of explain what we're looking at. Zoom in a little bit so we can see this maybe a little bit better. So the parking requirement in the MF2 zoning district is 1 space per unit because it is multifamily. The applicant, knowing that that is not particularly the kind of multifamily that they believe that they're building, they added 2-car garages to all of these units. So they have a total of 138 parking spaces in garages. That's twice the number that are required per code, plus the addition of 27 additional parking spaces. So there aren't additional parking spaces in those units, but we believe that the staff believes that that is an adequate number of parking spaces to park this project.
So is the additional parking primarily for guest parking? Because I know a lot of times in unit, other multifamily, you've got to have some amount of guest parking because you won't be parking in someone's garage.
Right. Those issues are typically addressed through the HOA requirements, that this HOA would say, hey, you can't park. Those are guest parking spaces. The staff has not drafted conditions that would require those to be guest parking spaces. And if one was to be drafted, we would probably require or recommend that it go through, that it essentially direct the HOA to address that issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson.
I'm just gonna tell you, I'm gonna vote no just because of the hammerhead in there. I asked that to be addressed, didn't get addressed, so that'll be my vote.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll take a 15-minute recess and you can get your wording down correctly.
Just for clarification, that's to amend 16, that's saying that they will perform all of those, and then 18 to do 4 more flashers. Does that sound accurate to what the council wants me to do?
So, right, removing number 16, the current Goodwin flasher, removing that, and then 18 would be putting flashers at all 4 legs of the roundabout.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We are In recess. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order, and before we move on to Ian, we'll go over to our attorney, Ms. Heiting.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Upon hearing the recommendation from Councilwoman Bybee, the city attorney's office and I have a concern that if we were to go against the direction from the engineer who has decided that the flashing lights need to be at Goodwin, or the recommendation is for the flashing lights to be at Goodwin, and that we are attempting to force the developer into dealing with an issue that exists right now in the traffic conditions, that we are possibly forcing them to take on a problem that is not theirs and is not the developer's creation. So please be aware that, one, I don't think it's appropriate to go against your engineer's recommendation without recommendation, and two, I have concerns that if we were to force the developer to take on the costs of fixing a crosswalk or the roundabout, which is a current condition.
Okay, clear?
I have a quick question.
Mr. Lawson, you're first.
So does that mean we should table this and bring it back, get another study? What are your recommendations?
No, I think we should allow the developer's representative to speak to the council, and we'll see how the plan goes from there. But I just wanted, with the recommendation coming from Community Services, I wanted you all to understand the concern that I have and when you listen to the recommendations.
Okay, with that said, I don't see any more comments, so Angela, why don't you come on down, representing the developer, Angela Foos. Welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Angela Foos with Loomis and Associates, here today on behalf of the applicant. Just to give you a little bit of background as to why the traffic engineer recommended the flasher on Goodwin and not in the roundabout. This was looked at from a global perspective, not so much specific to the school and when kids are getting out. From a bigger picture perspective, when you're coming up Los Altos, you're going 35, 45 miles an hour, and all of a sudden there is a crosswalk, and that's at Goodwin. And that's where the majority of people are crossing. There's a park down the street, so we have kids going to the park. There's a lot of people living up in the Goodwin area, so we have just a lot more activity in terms of pedestrian activity coming to Goodwin. And there's nothing to slow cars down other than a crosswalk. So it made more sense to put in a flasher there to warn people to slow down. That's opposed to when you're coming up to that roundabout, which is naturally kind of a traffic calming device. Because it naturally slows cars down, that in itself made the technical looking at this, people are already slowing down versus before they get to Goodwin when they were going 35, 45 miles an hour. Once they get to that roundabout, I think we all agree that there's some things that can be done to that roundabout, mostly related to the mature landscaping. It needs to be cut back. So from that perspective, it made more sense to propose cutting the landscaping back. By putting in flashers at those crosswalks on the roundabout, there was concerns that, as it was brought up earlier, I think people could get confused as to who's crossing, which entrance and entrance are people walking. People already have a hard time with roundabouts as it is, so there was concern that it would confuse people even more. However, given the discussion today, we would like to put it on the record that the applicant is willing to put in a flasher at the Goodwin crosswalk and 4 flashers at the roundabout. I think that there is a definite concern from those that live in the neighborhood and those that have driven in the neighborhood during a school time that there definitely are kids that cross at that roundabout. And the more we can do to make that a safer roundabout, the better off we all are. Adding new traffic just with this 4th leg isn't going to impose a major difference in that design. But if overall, I think if the council feels that it's a safety issue, I think that the applicant is willing to do that. And going against what your attorney advised you, because the applicant is putting it on the record, or at least through me putting on the record that they are willing to do that, hopefully that gives you a little bit more comfort level that you're not going against something legally that maybe you shouldn't be recommending, because the applicant has put forth that they are willing to do that.
Okay, any questions for Angela? Thank you, Angela.
Thanks.
Armando, Ian?
Mayor Smith, members of the City Council, I'm Armando Ornelas, the Assistant Community Services Director. So as requested by Ian in terms of the break, we do have a revised Condition 16 for you if you wish to include it as one of the conditions of approval. Rather than do or modify 16 and then add Condition 18, because they both pertain to traffic improvements. And because, again, staff is recommending to you that you not drop the flasher at Goodwin, the proposed Condition 16 would read as follows. The development agreement shall accomplish the developer shall accomplish the improvements detailed in the letter from Traffic Works dated September 17th, 2018, and include pedestrian flashers, 4, at each leg of the Vista Heights Los Altos roundabout in the civil improvement plans to the approval of the city engineer prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy for any structure within the project.
And is there an 18, or was that 18?
No, that includes all of the traffic improvements under one Condition 16.
Okay. Questions or comments, Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, I think question is not on that. It's on, I think, Star Canyon Drive. Is that going to be a public entrance exit? Or is that secondary or?
Star Canyon, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner for the record. Star Canyon is anticipated to be a emergency access exit only, or entrance and exit only.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Bybee?
So Armando, can you read on that condition, did you, you included the 4 flashers at the roundabout and kept the Goodwin?
Yeah, so if you would like, I could repeat the condition. I kind of went haltingly through it the first time around, so if you'd
that'd be
like, I
great.
would repeat it. The developer shall accomplish the improvements detailed in the letter from Traffic Works dated September 17th, 2018, and include pedestrian flashers, a total of 4, at each leg of the Vista Heights Los Altos roundabout in the civil improvement plans to the approval of the city engineer prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy for any structure within the project. So by retaining the requirement for accomplishing the detailed or the improvements detailed in the letter from Traffic Works, you would maintain the flasher at Goodwin. And then the second part of that speaks to the 4 roundabouts or the 4 flashers at the roundabout.
Okay, thank you. And actually, I do feel more comfortable with that because I would agree with Ms. Iding on not going against what an engineer had called for at Goodwin. And I appreciate Ms. Angela's explanation on why that flasher needs to still be there. So I'm comfortable with keeping that one there and appreciate the offer to put the 4 at that light. And as I said again, it's not just the children. It is our senior citizens, it's our families, it's the amount of pedestrian traffic that is up and down that green belt. So a lot of people are using it, and they're using it year-round too, not just when school is in. I mean, it's highly used, and I think that would greatly enhance the safety, and I appreciate their offer, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
So as I said, that's my neck of the woods up there, my neighborhood that I live in, and as we discussed, there are some inherent issues with that roundabout as far as safety and pedestrians. From the very beginning, I've actually been against this project in the sense that even I went to my neighbors telling them they needed to come to city council and planning commission meetings to protest it because I did not feel it was right. To my shame, I found out that I didn't have the whole story behind what was taking place. So I was against it. I felt it was the wrong thing for a multifamily unit to be going in, or multifamily development to be going in the middle of a bunch of single-family homes. But once I looked at it and realized the fact that it's all along in the past 30 years been planned for that multifamily housing. In fact, it could have been an apartment complex. That would have been the easier thing as I understand it. And I believe, and I want to commend the developer because of the fact that they've gone out of the way to appease the surrounding homes, the community that they're wanting to be a part of. So I guess with that being said, I just want to say that I will support approval of this, this item.
Ms. Harding, you comfortable with the fact that the developer came forward and said they're willing to do that?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve the tentative map request for a 69-unit multifamily residential townhome subdivision on a site of 7.72 acres in size in the MF2 PUD Multifamily Vistas Plan Development Unit zoning district located at 2255 Los Altos Parkway, Sparks, Nevada, adopting findings T1 through T12 in addition to the
As amended?
as amended, that was T16. As amended, T1 through T12, as amended. In fact, supporting these findings is set forth in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 17 is amended. So 1 through 17, if I can correct that, as amended, as listed in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second, Mr. Anderson.
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. You need to, Paul, push your button again.
Press it until it changes. There you go.
Okay, it passes 4-1. Mr. Lawson is the no vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 9.5. Consideration, discussion, and possible acceptance of the city's comprehensive annual financial report known as the CAFR for fiscal year 2017, 2018, and possible approval of the city's plans of corrective actions relating to the city's external auditors' conclusions and recommendations. Jeff and Debbie are on.
It's a mouthful.
I know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Congratulations and welcome to our newest council member, Councilman Anderson. What we have before you, I'm sorry, Jeff Kronk, Financial Services Director for the record. With me today, we also have Debbie Kinder, our accounting manager. And also in the audience is Dan Carter, I think he's still there, from Eide Bailey, who's our external auditor. So what we have before you today is the annual CAFR. I just wanted to say a quick couple of words, and then I'm going to turn it over to the expert here. But I'm quite proud of this document that we're giving you today. Kind of, if I can piggyback on your comments from, what was it, 9-3, where we were, you were approving the purchase of that fire truck. You mentioned fiscal responsibility, and that's kind of what we're all about in financial services, and fiscal responsibility and integrity. And that's what this document is really talking about. It's talking about the financial position, the compliance that we have to deal with, so many different laws, and of course, the auditor's opinion on our financials. And of course, they gave us an unmodified opinion, which is the highest that you can get. But we're also asking for acceptance of this document. Last year, fiscal 17, was, I believe, the 37th year in a row where we received the highest reporting award that you can get from the GFOA of America and Canada. And we're quite proud of that in our department. And so we're hopeful that this will also continue that tradition. But with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Debbie and thank her first for all her amazing work on this. This was a good audit. It's a clean audit, but there's a couple things that there's always findings, right? There's a couple things that we need your approval on, and she's going to walk you through that.
Welcome, Debbie.
Kinder, thank you. Debbie Kinder, County Manager. I have good news, and that for the first time since 2006, we don't have any financial findings. There's a difference between financial findings and grant findings. This year we have 3 grant findings. So our plan of corrective action has to be approved for federal spending of federal money, and the 3 areas that we had a finding on. The first was that we did not perform subrecipient monitoring for grant money that we gave to the city of Reno. And so our plan to go forward is to perform that subrecipient monitoring for Reno's actions. The second finding was related to our failure to obtain sufficient number of quotes before purchasing with federal money, and we have developed, our plan is in the mix. We are developing some procedures and some thresholds that the computer will set, so we will know when we hit that level that we need quotes. Probably going to be done with that by the end of the month, and then it'll all be in place. Hopefully we won't have that finding again. And the third finding is that we purchased food with federal grant money. We reversed that once the auditor found our error. The purchase was made by people who didn't realize they were spending federal money. So education is our plan going forward. They have been educated, and we won't repeat that one. So those are our 3 federal corrective action plans. We have one corrective action plan related to the state, and that is related to an overspend of our budget in the Parks and Rec Fund. We spent, I'll get it right, $72,377 more than we had budgeted in that fund. 44,000 of that would have been eligible for an exemption under NRS, but that still leaves the 28,000 that we overspent without an exemption. That was mostly due to the payment of retirement for temporary employees in that fund. We hit a threshold for those employees in the fiscal year, and then after they hit that threshold, you have to put them on PERS, and they didn't hit it till late in the year. We couldn't augment the fund, it was too late, so our plan is to budget more for pension expenses in the Parks and Rec Fund. So, those are our 2 plans of corrective action. We're asking you to approve the CAFR and approve those 2 plans, and then we will file for the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting again, the 38th year. And we have Dan, myself, or Jeff available for questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This process gives me great pleasure, having started my career 25 years ago in finance and in watching and being part of that process. It was not very long ago that a majority of the work that was done at the end of the annual cycle was actually performed by the auditors and not our staff. It is completely different now. We do all the work, and then the auditors do what auditors are supposed to do. They take a look at it and determine that we did or did not do it properly. This is an increase of professional behavior that the entire city's taken on as partners with finance, and finance is doing the hard work and to go through. And that also allows the relationship with our auditing firm to be one of a consultant, to where we have no problem being able to call and ask them questions because they can rely on the data that's there versus having to go out and finish the data and then give us an answer. So this is a testament to the hard work the management team has done over the last decade to make sure that we're doing the work, that we are working with the individual departments to make sure they understand and that they're in compliance with both accounting and other governmental records and governmental requests. And so it's with great pleasure that I say thank you very much for the hard work.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to accept the report. Mr. Abbott.
Yep. I move to accept the comprehensive annual financial report and approve the plans of corrective action for fiscal year 2017 to 2018 as presented, and authorize the Financial Services Director to distribute the CAFR to interested parties and to the GFOA for award consideration.
Okay, I have a motion. Look for a second. Mr. Dare.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you
very
for all
much.
the good work. Appreciate it. Keep us out of trouble. Okay, 9.6, consideration, review, and a possible acceptance of a gift from One World Lantern Festival for $4,834. Francine, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Francine Burge, for the record, Special Event Supervisor for the City of Sparks. I'm here for an item for your vote, although technically we don't need to have a vote for a gift that's under $5,000, but we're bringing it to the table just to show off a bit. We had this great event that was a first-time event this summer. You might have remembered in July it got rained out. They did reschedule it for September. It was a wonderful event. They had about 15,000 people in attendance. While we were planning the event, the producers asked me, they were interested in giving a portion of the profits back to the community, and they were interested in an arts organization. I did tell them about a few arts organizations, but I did add the City of Sparks. There are upcoming arts programs in the mix, and they chose to give the money to us to use for our arts programs. So I'm here to allow you to vote to accept this lovely gift of $4,834.
And that is from One World Lantern Festival.
Yes, it's a company based out of Utah.
Out of Utah? Okay. Any questions or comments? Ms. Bybee?
Ready for a motion?
Absolutely.
I move to accept this gift of $4,834 from One World Lantern Festival as outlined by staff.
Okay, I have a motion. Looking for a second. Mr. Abbott?
I'll second that and just say how great of an event it was. I hope they come back next year.
They've already applied.
Perfect.
So it rained in July?
Yes. Well, the only time it rained all summer long.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Downpour.
And a
Yeah.
downpour.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Francine. Good
Thank you.
events.
Tell them thank you.
We will. We'll write him a nice letter.
Okay, 9.7, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a contract AC 5540 for the 2019 permanent patch project bid number 1819013 to Sierra Nevada Construction, amount of $221,000 and $221,007. Amber.
Mayor Smith, members of council, Amber Sosa, Transportation Manager. I'm presenting you today a contract with Sierra Nevada Construction for the 2019 permanent patch project in the aforementioned $221,007. The permanent patch contract is intended to be a yearly contract, and the work involves permanent patching of our city-owned streets and alleys that are cut by our street cut permit holders. The work is conducted with direction and inspection provided by community service staff, and the permanent patch program is completely self-funded. All costs associated with the program are paid for through the street cut permit fees. This particular project was advertised on October 24th with bids received on November 7th. We received 3 qualified bids with Sierra Nevada Construction being the low. That's the contract before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions or comments? Mr. Dare?
I just have one question. How much, because construction's going crazy all over the place, have we seen a huge increase between last year and this year? Just I'm wondering, in anticipation of years to come, is this one area that's growing in cost, or are we doing okay?
We're doing a lot more work through the project. I believe the one before this spanned, instead of being a yearly contract, I think we were able to stretch it to 2. But yeah, the last one that we went through in about that year. So it seems to be an appropriate amount for about a year's worth of work. But yeah, you're absolutely right. As construction heats up, we get more of them. And it's something that through community services, we just monitor how much is left when we need to go out with another bid.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, is this to patch street cuts for this year? Or like for permits that got pulled this year, or is this upcoming, what we're guessing that we're going to have to patch for next year?
This will be upcoming.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I said, as we monitor how much we have left, how much we've utilized, and when we start to get low, so when we start to utilize all of this 221,000, we'll look at putting the project out again.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lawson?
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
Move to approve the 2019 permanent patch project contract AC 5540 to Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $221,007.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second. Mr. Abbott?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearing and action items. 10.1. Is this thing echo? Is it echoing?
Go.
Okay, second reading, public hearing, discussion and possible adoption of Bill number 2752, amending the Sparks Municipal Code Title 13 relating to the revision of limitations and wastewater strength applied to significant industrial users, together with other matters properly relating hereto. Mr. Drinkwater.
I'm sorry, that public comment, you were doing a public hearing.
I'll do it after you.
I apologize.
Before we take a vote.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Michael Drinkwater, Treatment Plant Manager, although I'm before you today as the Interim Environmental Control Services Supervisor. We had a retirement last week, so I caught this just for a short period. What you have before you today is a bill seeking to change the discharge limitations that are coded in Title 13 for what are significant industrial users. Those are industrial or commercial dischargers to the treatment plant who discharge in excess of 25,000 gallons a day. So big dogs, basically. In 2016, we had an audit of our environmental control pretreatment program by US EPA. They were reasonably impressed. They had one comment, and that was that we had not reviewed our local limits for some time. We started that process. Turns out we had inadequate data to adequately adjust those limits. So we did some sampling, did some analysis of the plant, and now we're before you with the results of that sampling program. If you looked at the table, you'll notice that some of the, many of the limits on our dischargers went up, meaning we relaxed them because that's what the science supported. Some of them were eliminated entirely and others were tightened because that's, again, what the science supported. Because the treatment plant obviously is jointly owned and we have dischargers in both, well, actually in Reno, Sparks, and potentially in Washoe County. There are no significant industrial users currently in the Washoe County area discharging to Tom Wharf, but potentially could be. So these limits will be adopted, assuming that you act favorably upon them, by all three entities that are tributary to Tom Wharf, so that the playing field is leveled for everybody. With that, I can go deeply into them if you are so inclined, or just let you know that this is what this is the result of a couple years worth of work to make sure that the plant is receiving wastewater that can adequately treat and it's not subject to upset by any particularly excessively strong pollutants from an industrial discharger or just outright toxics.
Okay. Questions or comments? Okay, oh, Mr. Dare.
I just have a quick question. Have we had, in the past, do we have some big problems with this? Is this what spun this on, or are we just being wise thinking forward?
There have not been any significant problems, sir. It is just a requirement. The US EPA under the Clean Water Act says you must have these, and we hadn't looked at them in a while.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, this is a public hearing item. I'll open up the public hearing and call Jay Witt. Come on down, Jay. Welcome. You want 10-2. Okay, forget it, Jake. I pulled the wrong one out. Okay, any questions or comments? Seeing none, looking for a motion? Mr. Abbott.
I'll go for it. I move to adopt Bill number 2752, an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Sparks Municipal Code, 13 relating to the revision of limitations on wastewater strength applied to significant industrial users' local limits.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second. Ms. Bybee?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Mr. Drinkwater. Okay, 10.2, second reading, public hearing, discussion and possible adoption of Bill number 2753, an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Sparks Municipal Code to increase sewer and storm drain user rates 5% annually from July 1st, 2019 through July 1st, 2022. To set multifamily residential and mobile home user rates equal to single-family user rates on July 1st, 2019, to increase the sewer connection fee by 30% on January 1st, 2019, and to increase the storm drain connection fee by 2.96% also on January 1st, 2019. Mr. Martini.
I apologize for that title, Mr. Mayor.
It's okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith, members of the council. John Martini, your Community Services Director. Before you today, kind of at a bit of a conclusion to a lot of work that your Community Services staff has done. Really, if you think back to it, it started when the council reviewed and approved the master sewer model that was land use based. You then gave direction to us to proceed forward with an updated rate study to cover the capital improvement and operating costs of our utilities enterprise funds, both sewer and storm drain. Mayor Smith, I'm going to walk us back in time a little bit. It has been nearly 2 months since we sat at the utility rate workshop. Councilman Anderson, being the new guy, this might feel like a lot, so I prepared a series of slides that speak to my staff report and also reference some of the materials that were included in the workshop. I hope it will help. I don't envy you, sir. We held the workshop on October 8th. As I said, it was a culmination of months of work, and thank you all for the monthly updates that you sat and listened to the science and the dollar signs, and I think you probably understand more about inorganic and organic nitrogen than most people do. We started in the workshop, I gave a brief description, background study of where we sit at Tumwharf, and my presentation to you was formed to answer a series of questions we're often asked. The first one is, what is the capacity at Tumwharf? I indicated to the council that we measure capacity at Tumwharf on two different fronts. The first being what we're allowed to receive per our permit from NDEP as validated by EPA. In the front door at Tumwharf, that's currently 40 million gallons a day. And then the other piece of the permit that we have to manage to, which is the amount of nitrogen we're allowed to discharge to the Truckee River from Tumwharf, being limited to 500 pounds per day. Then the question that comes up often is, what is the City of Sparks capacity at Tumwharf? Given those two criteria that define capacity on an influent basis, since the City of Sparks is a 31.37% owner of Tumwharf, that equates to 12.55 million gallons per day. Or if we look at the end of Tumwharf, where we discharge to the river, our ownership of the 500 pounds of nitrogen we're allowed to discharge is 156.85 pounds. How much sewer service has Sparks committed through the approval of new development to date? Actually, it's relative to October 5th is when we ran the numbers and prepared it for the council. We commit to serving sewer capacity to new development in one of three forms. We issue will serves with each final map. We issue intent to serves for each tentative map. We also do will serves for the projects and developments that don't come through council approval. They come through administrative reviews, typically for multifamily and commercial projects that are allowed by right in our zoning district. When we add it all up, we have a commitment of exactly 6,600 lots or equivalent dwelling units as of October 5th. So how much sewer capacity does Sparks have left? When we add them up, we're currently flowing into Tumwharf. Sparks' portion of the flow is 9.94 million gallons. Our single-family commitment is 0.77 million gallons per day. Multifamily commitments are at 0.41 million gallons a day for a total of just Sparks, which is 11.13 million gallons a day. We have a long-standing lease to serve Sun Valley. There is 0.86 million gallons per day still remaining on that lease. And then we have an agreement to serve residences and businesses north of La Posada in Washoe County that still has 0.11 million gallons per day left on that lease. And our total commitment, therefore, is 12.10 million gallons per day. How does that compare to the influent capacity rating? We basically have under 500,000 gallons left on an influent basis. Just for a point of reference, that 0.45 million gallons a day is approximately equal to 2,500 additional single-family or equivalent dwelling units. When we look at nitrogen, the story's a little bit bleaker. We will exhaust based on a very basic, very straightforward chemical model at Tumwharf that Mr. Drinkwater and I put together. We feel we will exhaust our 156.58 pounds of nitrogen around 11.7 million gallons per day. And the only way, therefore, to truly increase capacity at Tumwharf, since we're flowing into the plant right now at about 29 million gallons a day, we're permitted to 40, there's plenty of hydraulic inload capacity left. It is really in the treatment of the nitrogen on the back end, if you will. That's the only place we can increase capacity. As you are all well aware, we treat nearly 100% of inorganic nitrogen, being ammonia, nitrate, and nitrite. What we are not capable of treating at the plant currently is dissolved organic nitrogen. We have done some background work with UNR. They have pointed us in a couple of, they looked at 3 alternatives in the laboratory for a method to treat dissolved organic nitrogen. It is not widely treated in the United States. We will be among the first to do this if we're successful. They have led us to a technology called advanced coagulation and filtration that we will start pilot testing out at Tumwharf next month. Currently, based on some reasonable estimates for how much we'd have to side stream to maintain our permit, we estimate the cost for the advanced nitrogen treatment facility at $30 million. We also spoke about multifamily and single-family water use as a surrogate for sewer discharge using wintertime. If the council will recall, we looked at a series of data that Far West Consultants pulled for us. You can see from, during the recession, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, which is when we did the previous rate study, sewer multifamily was using on a basis of wintertime water demand less than single family. At that time, for those of you who were on the council, they came forth during the rate increase, asked for a discount basically to be charged at 80% of a single family. The numbers were certainly on their side. You will notice in the far right-hand column of this table, which is apartment vacancies. At that time, there was a high vacancy rate in the apartment multifamily customer class. As we can see, when you start around 2015, 16, 17, with lower vacancies, vacancy rate, we're seeing using the water meter data that multifamily customer class is on par, if not higher, than single family customer class. So part of what you're considering today is to reset what was done in 2012 and bring these two customer classes to the same rate based on this data. Capital improvement plans was presented to you. This is the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility CIP that is paid for by the Sparks Sewer Enterprise Fund. So this is our portion. There is a lot on here. I will note to you that anything you see in yellow are improvements or new construction that we need to make at Tumworth to support future development. This is building, if you will, capacity. Anything that's in gray is the capital improvement plan on the operations side of the ledger, if you will. That is to maintain the hardware and the infrastructure that we currently have to treat the flows we're seeing today and slightly into the future. So this 5-year CIP, which would run through fiscal year 23, shows $13.861 million need to be spent to rehab and maintain what we have today, and approximately 12.5, we'll call it, million dollars need to be spent in this 5-year period to make improvements for future growth and future capacity. You'll see the big blue arrow that is pointing to the nitrogen removal system, the advanced nitrogen system. You'll notice on this CIP, this CIP assumes the cost splits that we do with Reno, where when we pay 31.37%, Reno picks up the rest. Therefore, the cost, the $30 million cost for the advanced nitrogen system, this number, $9,411,000, would be Spark share under the 31% ownership. As we discussed in the workshop, there's a case to be made that Sparks has pushed its capacity more quickly than Reno has, that we have an immediate need to gain more capacity that Reno doesn't. So in the workshop, we presented to you a prudent idea to be able to pay for at least up to half of the advanced nitrogen treatment system, if not all of the treatment system, should our partner decide they don't need it. In this CIP, this is showing the standard splits. We reviewed this capital improvements plan for our collection system. Again, yellow being upgrades needed to accommodate future growth, and gray being the everyday work that we have to do in lines to keep the existing system working. We show we'll call it $9 million of investment needed in the existing system today, with an additional $3.5 million for future growth in our lines and collection system. Most of the projects that you see highlighted in yellow came out of that sewer study that the council approved. The study showed these were the lines that were in trouble as we continue to add development onto them, so they are in the CIP to be upgraded. And then finally, our Storm Drain Enterprise Fund, again, yellow being projects that need to get completed to accommodate future growth. And then the numbers in gray are our everyday keeping the system, storm drain collection system. In this case, it includes our dams and open channels running. That CIP for rehab for our everyday work is $7.5 million over the next 5 years. and then upgrades for future growth at 9.4. And you will notice the East Prater Way Storm Drain Project that is slated at 2.3 million. That is hopefully going to help us get the flooding at Vista and Prater under control so that every time we have a thunderstorm, we're not all stuck at the light or not able to go home. Then we covered with the council, we built a fairly simplistic but robust model to model the financials of which the CIP is input, but there are some other inputs that we walked the council through at the workshop. We have the ability to enter any annual user fee increase at the top line. At the time that we came to the council, we indicated that using the construction cost index, a reasonable estimate for just general inflation for the CIP is currently running at 2.96%. We propose that for the connection fee increased in 19, connection fee increase in 20 and 23 would be the same because in our current code, we are not set as we sit today ahead of this bill that you're reading. We would continue to index our connection fees. Don't forget that. That's in our code today based on the 5-year average of the consumer cost index. Working with finance and public works maintenance and Tumwharf, we have estimated our operating expenses at Tumwharf to be rising at about 5% a year right now. That's due mainly to chemicals and people and power. And the same in our operations for maintaining our collection system. And then finally, the bottom numbers are our estimates for what growth will be in the next 5 years. The numbers in blue are numbers that we can measure today. So they're real numbers, if you will. And the numbers in green are what we estimate. So for single-family customer growth rates, fiscal 19, even though we're a little bit slow right now on building permits, we're still estimating about a 2.3% growth rate. For fiscal years 20 and 21, we use the consensus forecast growth rate, which is 1.6%. And then to be somewhat conservative and I feel prudent in fiscal years 22 and 23, we slowed that down to 1% growth rates. On the multifamily side, we're a little more aggressive due to what we can still see in the pipeline. Mr. Witt's in the corner. He's still generating some of this work for us. We have growth rates at fiscal year 20 still at 4.5%, fiscal year 21 at 1.6%, and then those tapering off to 1% in 22 and 23. And then to give the council some familiarity with what that means, we gave you a simple list of how many dwelling units or apartments that would mean or realize. So in fiscal 20, using those assumptions, we'd build 505 more single-family homes and 448 multifamily apartments or any of the multifamily class. And then by 23, those numbers would be down to 329 homes and about 107 multifamily units. So the end of the model is somewhat conservative. The fiscal years 19, 20, 21 are a little more aggressive based on what we can see in the pipeline today. Then for the storm drain model, the storm drain cash flow model is much more simple than the Tumwharf model because it's not shared with the city of Reno. It doesn't have its own effluent program to it. We simply average those growth rates, and they actually average to 1.6, magic of math, which is the consensus growth rate, and then used operating inflation in the lines, or storm drain lines, and some department growth in positions at 5%. Then we presented you 5 scenarios based on different ways to play with this model. The first one was the do nothing scenario where we don't change anything and everything stays status quo. And we saw that we run out of cash in about 2 years based on the CIP and the operating needs. Scenario 2 was the minimum needs where we took the standard Tumwharf enhanced nitrogen removal construction cost share. We didn't add in some of the newer positions. And that required a 15% connection fee increase and a 2.96% or an inflationary user rate increase to make that work. Scenario 3 was the staff preferred scenario where we called it the 50-50, where the Tumwharf enhanced nitrogen removal construction project, Sparks would pick up 50%. That required a 40% connection fee increase, and then again, the user rate increase for all customer classes at 2.96%, or the 5-year average of the CCI. Scenario 4 was the all Sparks alternative, where we assume the advanced nitrogen project would fall on our shoulders and we'd have to pay for it completely. That required a 105% initial connection fee increase, again, assuming the user rate increase just at inflation. Scenario 5 was kind of a hybrid of 3, and we looked at bumping up the connection fee 15% every year, and then including a 2.96% user rate increase. And if you will recall, that worked very well. It generated a lot of cash, but the connection fees ended up at about $14,000 a home at the end of that. So at the end of the workshop, you did provide direction to Mr. Driscoll to bring forth amendments to Title 13. You recommended that we increase the utility user rates at 5% beginning July 1st of 2019 through July 1st of 2020, and to increase the connection fees a one-time bump of 30% on January 1st of 2019, and to continue to index the connection fees yearly at the 5-year average of the CCI. That scenario 3A, we modeled for you. That was the 50-50 split with the 5% user rate increase, a one-time bump of 30%. And we showed you the inputs that would go into the model: 5% annual increase, 30% bump, and then a connection fee increase of 2.96% every year thereafter. We put the same 5% user growth rate into the storm drain, and we showed the only change to the CIP under this scenario would be for the advanced nitrogen removal system. Instead of the $9.411 million, you see the half the cost, $15 million. We showed you what the user rates would become per this proposal. I have a big blue circle on the multifamily. In fiscal 20, you'll see that they'll become $37 a month total charge between sewer, storm drain, and flood, which is equal to the residential rate, which is included in the bill before you. Don't forget, we'll also increase the user rate on our commercial dischargers. They pay per 1,000 gallons. The numbers here show a 5% increase beginning in fiscal year 20. Just for a point of reference, for a single-family home, we're currently paying $21.76 per month for sewer service. By the end of fiscal 23, that number becomes $26.45. So a little under $5 raise over the 4-year period. Multifamily, we'll see an adjustment in fiscal 20 to come on par with residential. They will go from $17.42 a month to $22.85 in fiscal year 20, and then by fiscal year 23 be at $26.45 a month per sewer service. You'll notice the storm drain fees will be increasing at 5% as well, and that our flood rate for funding the North Truckee Drain and now repaying the bond since construction is complete remains static, and there is no changes to that fee proposed by staff at this time. Connection fees with the 30% bump in fiscal year 19, it would be January 1st of next month, actually. Connection fees for sewer will go from $4,618 per single-family home to $6,124.30. And by fiscal 23, we're also assuming you'll keep the indexing in place. They will index at what we understand the average of the CCI, and we've predicted that number forward. They will rise to $6,882.25. Connection fees on our commercial industrial discharges are done by weighted fixture units. As you'll recall, a sink, a toilet has a rating. Those will also increase by 2.96%. They'll be indexed. So we went through the operating cash flow models. We showed you, given the criteria, the input, the 5% user rate increase, the 30% one-time bump index thereafter, does provide adequate cash in both sewer and storm drain, allows us to pay for half of the advanced nitrogen treatment facility at Tumworth. And more importantly, should we need to fund 100%, there will be enough cash on hand between the operating side of the ledger and the capital side of the ledger that with the help of Mr. Cronk, we could probably enter the bond market with enough cash on hand to bond in the future to own 100% of the advanced nitrogen system. At the conclusion of the rate study, staff did commit to getting the word out on the street. We met with the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee actually before we held the workshop, in that there are user group, if you will, our internal Development Services Enterprise Fund Oversight Committee. We often run numbers through them before we hold a workshop with the council to get their input so we can report to you. They didn't love the fact that connection fees and user rates were going up. They understood. We met with AGC, Associated General Contractors, on October 16th. We met with the Builders Association of Northern Nevada on November 5th, and then the Sparks Citizens Advisory Committee on November 8th. That was the outreach and presentations we made after, or with the exception of the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee, after the workshop. We presented the results in your direction. Now to get to the bill at hand, should the council agree to approve the bill, you will be changing Title 13 of the Sparks Municipal Code to enact the direction you gave us. Specifically, we will be increasing sewer and storm drain user rates by 5% annually beginning July 1st, 2019. We will increase the sewer connection fees by 30% and the storm drain connection fees by 2.96% on January 1st, 2019. And we'll adjust the sewer and storm drain connection fees by the November to November Engineering News and Review Construction Cost Index, beginning again on January 1st, 2020. And we'll set the multifamily residential sewer user rate equal to single-family residential on July 1st of 2019. Specifically, there are portions of the code that need to be amended. I've listed them in my staff report for your reference. Should you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And before I sign off, Mayor Smith, I wanted to take a moment to thank Far West Consulting. They kind of herded the cats to help us build this model. They provided excellent oversight, and Brent's here, should you have any questions of his work. I want to thank our finance department. They helped us with a ton of billing numbers, and I want to thank Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Kreutz for being supportive, and I want to thank you for your time. We spent a lot of time with the council. We brought some difficult conversations to you, and I hope you're pleased with the performance of your community services department and the transparency of the data we gave you. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions, Mr. Lawson?
We had any conversations with Reno yet as to their participation? Especially in the Dawn Polisher.
We are just starting those conversations, Councilman Lawson, and I will, I think it's best to say we haven't gotten to the Dawn Polisher. We're still having conversations on what capacity Reno may have on the books remaining. What we need to get an understanding of that order of magnitude before we enter into the next discussion, which is participation in basically the construction of the Dawn Polisher, and thank you for using that word.
Hey, I'm learning something. I know more about sewer than I ever wanted to.
I'm sure you do. I apologize for that.
Mr. Dare.
I wanted to thank our staff. I think since I've been on here for 2 years, I've learned more here than in all of high school and college about all this stuff. So it's actually pretty amazing. You guys lay it out in a way that we can understand it. And so I think I know I want to say to any of our constituents that are looking at this, it's never easy when we have to come back and ask for more money for something. And I don't want to act like this was at all a quick decision by any means. We tried to approach it as fair as we can, and I'm sure somebody's going to find a way to say, you know, there's something that didn't seem fair, but we tried to come together, and our staff did a great job of pulling this together. The one question we did talk a little bit about, and maybe we're just not there yet, knowing where Washoe County might be with what they might need, I still think it's wise to possibly go and see if Reno, whatever, if they could help us bring more capacity, because they're going to need some of that in Spanish Springs. I just put that on out there, that I think that's wise as well. But you guys have done a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, on the, I guess more just confirm, so the sewer bill would be paying for rehab, maintaining what we currently have, is how that's set up, and the connection fees is for new growth.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to.
Yes, this year in this utility rate study, we did separate our bread and butter everyday costs from costs that can be, it's the argument, if there wasn't growth, we wouldn't need to build this. So we did separate them. We did our best to, say this is purely growth. Half of this will be expansion. The other half we need for where we are today. I commend staff and particularly Mr. Drinkwater for helping us navigate that. It can get, you've been out there, it can get a little complicated as to what's what. Mike did a fantastic job with former utility manager Hummel, Benedict Arnold Hummel, I'm sorry, who left us to go on to greener pastures. I don't know that we could do a better job for you, Councilman Abbott, and I think we've shared everything that we know with you, so I am confident in the numbers.
Thank you.
Ms. Bybee?
I want to thank staff also for all the hard work, and these are tough decisions, obviously, when we're raising fees, connection fees, and the user fees. For the user fees, I think all of us would acknowledge that we have a very old plant. We've got an old plant that needs a lot of work on it, not just because of growth, but just for all of us who are living and have lived here for a while. And I think the cost of everything does tend to go up. We've tried to keep it pretty reasonable, and I feel comfortable with the user fees that are going up and incrementally. I think we're reasonable on that, and I especially appreciate the fact that the connection fees to allow or to ask growth to pay for itself, which I hear a lot from my constituents, and is also my feelings, is that growth should be paying for itself. And I think we've done a good job with this proposal of asking growth with the connection fees to do that, to do just that. And I don't know that the general public really understands our limitations are really on the nitrogen, and that anywhere in the country we don't have the nitrogen requirements that are so stringent that we have in our TROA agreement. So if we lived somewhere else and we had a sewer plant that was, needed to process, we wouldn't have the same restrictions that we have here, and that's costly. It's important, and I think for the environment, for our river, for Pyramid Lake, for all of that, it's important, but it does add additional cost and additional complication for us that other communities don't have. Super excited about the Dawn Polisher and the program with the university and the Water Innovation Campus, and some real potential for us doing things that are groundbreaking here in our community, and I hope that Reno comes on board with us too and helps share those expenses, because I think the whole community will benefit from it. So thank you again.
Thank you for the comments.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you for slowing it down for me there. So I do have some, I'm sure they're elementary questions in comparison. But if the growth is taking place, and why is that not being offset or offsetting the fees? Why do we need to raise everyone if we're seeing additional growth?
That is a good question. So let's assume there's no growth at all. We don't need to worry about connection fees. We're not going to issue any building permits. The plant, as Councilwoman Bybee pointed out, was built in 1964. It's been upgraded. I could have Mr. Drinkwater come down. He knows them by heart. It's been upgraded 3 times as the community has grown. It is probably a $750 million facility, maybe $500 million. I don't know what the current value is, but it's in that neighborhood. Just the replacement cost due to depreciation, and add into it, we are experiencing, Councilman Anderson, quite a bit of inflation, particularly in chemicals. As the world woke up and construction got busy again, Michael's cost to operate the plant we've seen the contracts come in, they keep going higher. So to get to your question, if we had no growth, we would still need to fund the plant to keep it running, and those costs are going up, and a lot of that old equipment is coming to the end of its useful life, and they have big ticket items to replace them. You're talking pumps that can run $400,000 for a new pump. There's miles and miles of pipeline out there, lots of big giant air blowers to blow air through the system to make it switch between anaerobic and aerobic conditions. I don't even know how much concrete's out there, and some of it is, was put in place 2 years before I was born, so it's coming to the end, and you'll notice the hair's a little gray, so it's getting old. I hope that answers your question. It's a facility that's key to the valley. It is the largest sewer shed in the Truckee Meadows. I would suspect 80% of sewer flow comes here to Tumwharf. And it's just old, and it needs to be rehabbed and rebuilt in time every year. We put about $10 million a year in it just to upgrade equipment and to replace equipment. And when we have some time, I'll be happy to run you through 2012 and 13 and 14 when the plant actually had some tough days. We had some failures because investment in the plant wasn't always where it is today. And we're trying to stay on top of it. I feel lucky that we've had a council now for a good 10 years that has been committed to keeping Tumwharf funded and moving forward.
Thank you. And just one other question. I understand that there is some component or something that can be done if a homeowner says, I just can't afford the additional cost. Is there something like that that is available to them?
Under certain criteria, yes. And that, we have cleaned that language up in the sewer rebate program. Folks that meet certain demographic criteria can come in and request up to 1/4 billing of rebate. So it's not all folks. It is certainly a portion of our population, and there are criteria they have to meet to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? For me, John, these are decisions that are tough. That's what we're elected to do, to make decisions, and some of them are pretty tough. What I appreciate is the workshop we had. It was comprehensive. We went through everything, and when I left the workshop, and I think talking to everybody, they said, man, that was good. We had a lot of good information, and I think we're heading in the right direction. We're doing what we have to do and trying to ease the pain a little bit on everybody. So to you and your staff, those workshops are invaluable to us, and we appreciate the effort that you and your staff put in today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Just keep in mind, too, that we are still paying substantially less than Reno and Washington County.
Yes.
So even with the increases, we are still well below what they're charging. And I think that shows that we are being fiscally responsible also.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll open up the public comment period. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak, just submit a card. Mr. Witt, come on down. We're on 10-2 now. Thank you, John.
Missed it by one.
You were close. You were close.
Mr. Mayor, I'm particularly glad to see you here today, members of the council. I'm glad to meet the newest member, Councilman Anderson. Congratulations, and hope you don't have to deal with me too much. I, as a developer, you might find it odd that I'm here generally to support what has gone on here because of the costs associated. We're all trying to keep our costs down. Costs in the area have gone up significantly. Probably our construction costs have gone up 40+% the last couple of years. And so, why am I here supporting what's happened? And let me go back a couple of years. When we were investigating Victorian Square to proceed on a larger scale basis and buy the land from the Nugget and such to really make it a complete redevelopment, I actually had a meeting with Mr. Martini, John Martini. And John proceeded to, I think what he thought was scare me in the enormity of the issue of this sewer capacity coming to a close. In reality, what he was doing was he was reassuring me. He didn't know that at the time. Because really what I was looking for was that somebody was alert, somebody was on watch on deck, and this was, there was going to be a solution, and it wasn't going to be a last-minute situation. And that, that's so unusual in my interactions with, many municipalities around the U.S. So, first off, I want to give my hats off to John. This thing's is very complicated because of the nitrogen issue. And the fact that he started when he did and the size of the complexity and coming up with the solutions that they believe that they've got, at least in the lab, I believe, to have a very unique nitrogen effectively removal process that has really not been done anywhere else, which will actually reduce costs relative to the other options that were available, is a compliment to John, his staff, and the city. I mean, I find it to be very refreshing. I mean, to be thinking that way. That being said, I would ask at the same time that large-scale commercial projects, multifamily projects, be allowed to be categorized as with a commercial project. You have on usage, not connection, but on usage fees, there's a category for commercial industrial. Everybody in the United States considers large-scale multifamily to be a commercial project. Why is that? Because we should be paying for what we're using, exactly what we're using. If we're very inefficient, we should be paying more. If we're less efficient, we should be paying less. So I would ask that that option be, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, finish up.
30 seconds, be allowed. It benefits you all too, because it incentivizes folks being conservative, particularly older projects, that when they do a renovation, instead of just doing paint and touch up and so it looks pretty on the outside, if they actually dig into the guts of the project and make it water efficient throughout, they have the opportunity to actually hopefully lower their costs because they're lowering their usage. And what does that do for you all? Well, that gives more capacity to the plant and gives you more longevity to the plant. So I would ask that just if you all would consider basically codifying that multifamily is commercial and is allowed to opt into that usage side of it. The connection fees we're not talking about, just the usage. And again, my hat's off to the city staff and the fact that they've kept me informed along the way. It had a great deal to do with our proceeding with Victorian Square.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Looking for a motion. Sometime today. Mr. Abbott.
I move to adopt bill number 2753, an ordinance amending chapter 13 of the Sparks Municipal Code to increase sewer and storm drain user rates and connection fees as submitted by staff. And could I also, I don't know if I could add it here, but I think it'd be interesting to maybe do a little research into what Jay mentioned, just to get more information before we do make a decision down the road, if we do or if we don't. But I don't know if I can put that as my motion or just put it as a comment, but that's that.
That would be considered more of a comment, sure.
Well, I'm concerned about the motion and then the addition of the comment. So either he's making a motion to adopt what has been presented in the agenda item.
And then you can make that comment under further discussion. Why don't you do that? So,
do you want me to repeat or?
Repeat the motion if you would, yeah.
Okay. I move to adopt bill number 2753, an ordinance amending chapter 13 of the Sparks Municipal Code to increase sewer and storm drain user rates and connection fees as submitted by staff.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second. Mr. Dare?
I'd like to second that with discussion too.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, what I said earlier about, it'd be interesting just to do a little research and just see if that's something we want to look into and go down, just gain more information on it before we do make a decision, as per some of his comments.
Okay.
I'm concerned about Mr. Abbott's comment about before we make a decision, this is set for vote today. This is the second reading and is set for action by council.
Did he say that in his last comment or when he first said it?
Well, this last comment about, before we make a decision, today is a decision.
Yeah, we're
Making
making a
day.
decision.
I guess I was basing the decision on changing anything and related to the apartments commercial at a later date.
So you made a motion to approve
Yes.
10.2.
Yes,
And then under discussion, you're saying we should look at it down the road?
not this, the sewer apartment adjustment.
Designation?
Yeah, at a
Okay.
later date, and that's what I'm talking.
Okay, we can look, you want to just keep an eye on that? Is that what you want to do?
Mr. Mayor, if I
Okay.
might.
Go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
I would, based on the conversation with all the members, I would be taking that as direction to kind of determine what it would take to come to a decision point as it relates to multifamily for the potential of being reclassified as commercial. We would need to understand, well, some of the components that would qualify under that definition, if we were to do it today, might be able to do it, others might not. And so from our standpoint, I think your staff needs to take some time, may take a couple cycles for us to gather some data and go forward. So I would take that as direction to the manager's office to begin kind of analysis and research and report back to you on a periodic basis as to what we're determining.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Your comments are great, and let's, under comments from the city council, put that under there. That way we can give direction, whatever we want to do. Mr. Dare?
I just want to agree that exploring it is a good idea and looking at the rebate, the idea, not rebate, the idea that somebody could potentially save themselves money and somehow communicate that by that. I think that's a great approach because it does help us. And so obviously there's a lot more mix to it, but I do think at large, it'd be great because people could see what potential savings they could have if they invest a little bit in their own property. But I do support this fully.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, John, and your staff again. Good job. Let's move on to 11, planning and zoning public hearings and action items. There are none. So I'm going to open up the public comment period. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Bill, I'm surprised. Come on down, Bill.
The wallflower.
Welcome, Bill.
That's what I originally came here for. Mr. Mayor, City Council member, for the record, my name is Bill Wagner, and I live in Sparks. I would like to congratulate a few of you. Ron, I know you're going to be a great mayor. The citizens of Sparks are very lucky to have you as the new mayor.
Thank you, Bill.
Charlene, boy, you're something. 70% voting in your favor? Wow. The citizens of Sparks must think highly of you. Ed? Boy, you good. I know, you are good, you are good.
I got 100%, Bill.
I know. You're good because no one ran against you.
That's how I got 100%.
I know, that's how good you are. Nobody's scared of you.
Scary.
And Paul, nice to have you on board. You're gonna be well welcomed.
Thank you, sir.
After all you sitting up here in the dais, did a great job at Gino's dinner. I know he appreciated all your comments. He really did. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else wishing to speak at this time? Okay, seeing no, bring it back to the council for comments from mayor, city council, and city manager. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. But I just want to remind you that this is your last meeting for the month. The regularly scheduled meeting for both the council and the redevelopment agency that would take place on the 24th of November have been canceled. You have appropriately taken care of redevelopment business today, and you will be able to then revisit, if needed, redevelopment at the first meeting in January. So regular council, the next time you will meet as a body in a regularly scheduled meeting will be on Monday, January 14th, 2019. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Christopher Dare.
Welcome, Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, sir.
I feel like I'm in the Matrix, Mr. Anderson.
Any other comments? For me, we do have a new council member, Councilman Anderson. So if you can't do it today, please come up and introduce yourself to him and let him know what you do. He'll probably forget, but still, at least you made the effort, and we can move on from there, because he is new to the organization. He's been to almost all the council meetings in the last 9 months, except for a few. And so he's familiar with what we're doing down here, but he's not familiar with the people who work here, and there's a lot of good people who work here that you need to meet.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Without objection, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting on Monday, December 10th, 2018, with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee,
Here?
agency members Abbott,
Here.
Lawson, Anderson, Smith,
Here.
Deere,
Here.
agency attorney Iding,
Here.
and Chief Administrative Officer Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you. Item 2. Excuse me, we just did item 2. Item 3, public comment. Do I have any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Item 4, 4.1, approval of the agenda for possible action. Agency Member Dare.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second? Agency Member Abbott.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. They working? Motion carries unanimously. Item .5, 5.1, consideration, discussion, possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of November 26, 2018 for possible action. Do I have corrections, additions, or a motion to approve? Agency Member Abbott?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Agency Member Lawson? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote.
I wasn't here to go over the minutes.
Okay. No, that works. Perfect. Okay, carries 4-1. 6.1, business items. Consideration, possible acceptance of the report of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of November 8th, 2018 through November 21st, 2018. Possible action. Do I have a motion to approve? Agency Member Lawson?
Move to approve.
I have a second. Agency Member Abbott?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Item 7.1, comments from the public. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I close that. 7.2, comments from the agency and chief administrative officer. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.